How are you doing? This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave. And what we're going to talk about today is the reasons why you can't build wealth in 2023. If you're a person that's looking to try to figure out how to build wealth for you and your family, for you and your group, there's some very specific things that you want to pay attention to because if you don't know these things, it can impact your ability to build wealth, and it can impact your ability to build the amount of wealth that you desire to build. And it can leave you very frustrated because you may start blaming yourself for things that may not necessarily be your fault. They may just be a situation that you're experiencing and that you may not have the proper information to understand how to get out of it. And what I mean is that many people can arrive in their later years not having built the amount of wealth that they desired. And they often will get told, well, you know what? It's because you were irresponsible. It's because you had bad spending habits. It was because that you didn't do this, or maybe you didn't do that. And often it's because they didn't really understand some of the things that we're going to talk about. And so when you're looking to build wealth, in my opinion, there's a comprehensive understanding that you need to have around wealth building. And you take that comprehensive understanding and you apply it to that particular situation. So that's what we're going to talk about today, right? And we're going to continue to keep updating this class based on how economic data starts to change so people can understand their particular specific situation and understand how to apply that specific situation to what they have going on. Now, really quickly, right, this show is being sponsored by www.thehighestpaid.online. And so we're currently having our August sale, and that is going to be 15% off with the code AUG15. This sale is going to end on 8/29, and there's a special bonus in the particular class. There's a PDF called Don't Make the Biggest Investing Mistake of Your Lifetime. And that's going to kind of fall in line with what we're talking about. Many people arrive in their later years, and what they realize is that I made a lot of investing mistakes that I necessarily didn't know about until I got older. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and I was telling them that I wish we could tell younger people what they needed to be responsible for from an investing standpoint. And this person agreed that I wish I kind of knew about a lot of this stuff earlier. What I want to really encourage you to do is that get tapped into this type of information as soon as possible, because in my opinion, the cost of the course is worth the information, what it's going to be valuable. The cost of the course is worth the information because it's going to be valuable to you over the course of your lifetime. So I would look at it as an investment in your investing lifetime, not a financial advisor. I don't have a Series 7. I can't give investing advice, but what I can show you is that many people are falling victim to questions that they don't know how to ask in their investing journey. And I'm encouraging you to ask those questions early on so you don't fall victim to certain things, right? Because when you don't have the money, none of the experts are going to come help you. They're going to move on to the next person, right? So let's go ahead and get into the content real quick. Now, here's one of the reasons why you may not be successful at this. You have not been taught to see this properly, and you often lack focus. Most people have not been taught to focus on this particular area of their life, and they also have not been taught how to see this properly. What I mean is that they don't even know what questions to ask around this particular topic. So many people are just on autopilot. They're doing what the people around them are doing, whether that's correct or incorrect, they don't know. And then they end up in a bad situation, and then they have like a crisis, and then they don't understand why things are going so bad for me. And it's not necessarily 100% their fault. Many people don't know this. So what we're going to talk about today, many people will realize it's the first time anybody's presented this information to me in this particular form. Often, once they learn about it, then they lack focus. So what is your goal, and what are you trying to focus on, and why are you going to let other things around you, right, negatively influence that particular goal? And so I think once a person understands and then understands that they need to focus, they can put themselves in the best position to be successful. All right, let's go to the next slide. So the first thing we want to talk about, what is your real income? And when I say real income, I mean, what is your income adjusted for inflation? So we just got some update income. In Miami-Dade, median household income is around $61,000, right? It's a little bit under the state of Florida income. And one thing we know about Miami, there's a big disparity in Miami between the people that got a lot of money and the people that have no money. We got median at around $61,252 for a household. Go to the next slide. What is your real income? We're at 3.2 inflation year over the year, right? So you can look at inflation. You can look at how much money you're not making and how much money you need to make to stay in pace with inflation. So with the 61,252, the salary, the wage that you needed to keep pace with inflation is going to be around 63,212, right? So really you have a deficit at the end of the year at about $1,900, $1,960, give or take. So the question you want to ask yourself is that, how do I make sure that my salary stays in pace with inflation? because most people are not going to get a 1960 raise over the course of the year. Maybe if you work in sales, maybe if you work in some type of commission job, but for many people, their year-to-year salary increase is not going to be 1960. So you can do the math on your own and ask yourself, 1960 is what percentage of 61,000 to 61,252? And then ask yourself, do I get that type of percentage raise year to year in my particular job? And we understand we're looking at inflation that's not adjusted for food and gas. So food and gas, but most importantly, energy cost, they raise the rate of inflation. But when we look at inflation, we pull out food and gas because we will get a number way higher than 3.2%. We bring food and gas, and we might be looking at 5 or 6% inflation, right? So this is what you want to understand. You're never making the money that you're actually making on your job. You're only making money in comparison to what the rate of inflation is. And inflation is a hidden tax on poor people. Many people that are more well-to-do economically, they can pay the 3.2% increase. It doesn't bother them. For a lot of people that are really well-to-do, another 1960 added to their bills at the end of the year is not a big deal. So there's people in Miami that got real money. There's billionaires in Miami. Puff lived down in Miami. A lot of ball players, a lot of really rich business people live in Miami. I was going to do a video one day about the rich businessman from Miami. He brought those two white girls down to Miami, the two twins. They did an NIL deal to get them down there. That guy's a very successful business person. An extra 1960 to that guy's not a big deal because he gave those two girls an NIL deal, which is going to be worth way more than 1960, right? But for a lot of people that don't have it, an extra 1960 to their bills is going to be a detriment. So for a lot of people, if they all of a sudden right now, somebody said, well, you owe this bill, it's 1960, they couldn't pay it because they don't have that much margin in their income. So they're barely making it with the money that they're making. If their car breaks down and it takes 1960 to fix it, if they don't have it on the credit card, they can't get the car fixed. You're never making the money that you're making. You're only making the money that you're making in comparison to the inflation rate. You're never going to retire on the money that you have. You're going to retire on the money that you have in comparison to inflation. Therefore, if you're looking to get $1 million for retirement, $1 million today is not going to spend the same way today it spends in 25 years. It won't. Because in 25 years, it just won't have the same type of spending power. Just like $1 million today is like $300,000 in the 90s, right? It doesn't spend the same way. And so that's what I want people to really understand. I want to really encourage you to kind of get your head out of the clouds when it comes to looking at these particular topics, because they're really not that difficult, but it takes you turning and facing your economic reality and really understanding where you're at economically and not getting caught up with the masses of people who are just going to be distracted. And then when they have a crisis, they're going to then try to figure things out as opposed to trying to figure these things out early. Okay, let's keep going. So how much does rent cost? We're looking at the Miami market. We got rent from Zumper at around $2,763. So $2,763 is the median rent in Miami. Okay, that's for a one bedroom, right? That's relatively expensive to me based on the market that I'm at. That's 8% increase year over year. So in Miami, rents have gone up. Okay, so we got median rent at $2,763 in Miami, 8% increase year over year change. So we take the $2,763, multiply that by 3, because what do we know? Most of the time they tell you that your rent or your housing is supposed to be 1/3 of what you bring in. We take that number, we multiply it by 12, right? So we got 99468. So you're going to need 99468 to support the 2763 in rent monthly. Now we looked at the median income, it wasn't 996. We looked at the median household income, it wasn't anywhere close to 99468. So these are the kind of questions people got to kind of ask themselves. How am I going to support myself in this economy when baseline I don't make enough money? The rate of inflation is taking $1,900 off my paycheck, and then rent, right, at a multiple or 3 times multiple of what I'm of a third of what I'm supposed to be making. So I'm supposed to make a multiple of my rent times 3. I make really maybe 1/3 less than what I should be making to pay the rent in Miami, even though I live in Miami and I know the median income there. So then you got to ask yourself the questions: how are people surviving in this particular economy when they really, based on the numbers, don't make enough money to stay in this economy? And that's why I tell people all the time, I don't listen to all the narratives around how much money people are making, because we do have a segment of people that are making a lot of money. Do we also have another segment of people that are barely making enough money to get by, but they're figuring out how to get by floating credit, things of that particular nature, rooming with people, yada, yada, yada. But they're presenting this narrative on the internet that they got so much money, but the data still never shows that. right? The people that have it, this is not going to be a problem for them. I'm talking to people that not going to have it. Now, here's why you can't build wealth. We're going to kind of go into it. And here's a conversation that they should be having to you in school, but they don't get paid to really get you to face your economic reality. First thing, budgets don't build wealth. Can budgets help build wealth? Definitely, right? You knowing the money that comes in and out of your business, which is really your lifestyle, is very important. Just like if you're running a business, you should do a P&L either every month or every quarter, right? You should know how much money is coming in, how much money is coming out. In your personal life, you should know how much money is coming in, how much money is coming out, because your life is your business, right? But budgets by themselves don't build wealth, right? They don't. So just telling a working class person or a person that is underemployed or a person that doesn't make enough money that they just need to budget better. The question is that if they don't have it coming in, then it can't be going out, right? It can't be. Now they could maybe look at how much money they're spending on credit, but if the income's not coming in, then the income can't come out their household, because once they tap out their credit lines, and that's going to be the end of that. And so a lot of this single factor analysis to where you just got to budget better. Well, if you're not making it, then it doesn't matter how much you budget because you're not making it. And we never want to deal with the fact that, do we have a segment of people that need to be better stewards of the money that they make? Yes, but we have another segment of people that just don't bring enough money in. And often we're talking to the segment of people that don't bring enough money in as if they actually do bring enough money in, and they don't. They just don't have it on the front end. So therefore, they can't budget it. So most people, if your lodging or your housing went up by 50% this year, right? There's no budget that you're going to be able to find in your money, right? That won't work. The person that is making $60,000 and the housing is going to cost them $90,000, there's no way they can budget and find $30,000 more dollars because it's not in the money. So again, if you're making $65,000 household and lodging, what I call lodging, what people call housing, but what I call lodging is going to be around $90,000. There's nowhere in the world you're going to be able to create $30,000 out of a budget because it's not there, right? So I think budgeting could be a good exercise for people to really understand how much money they actually bring in, but it's not a solution to money that doesn't exist in their budget. Let's go to the next one. So these are the things that produce wealth in this particular world that we currently live in today. Houses, land, machinery, companies. Now, you don't necessarily have to own the company. You can buy like what we call index funds, and you own the company via the index fund or via the stock. So we talk about companies. You can own the business or you can own stock in the business. But houses build wealth in this particular economy that we're currently in now. Land builds wealth in this particular economy that we're in. Owning machinery, the means of production, builds wealth, and companies build wealth. People that own these things produce wealth income. Nothing else in this world produces wealth income. You can have all the IP in the world until your IP turns into a company or somebody buys the patent for your IP because they want to therefore turn it to a company. It doesn't build any wealth. So people running around here trying to do idea and they think their idea is money. Until somebody can turn your idea into a company, it doesn't make any money for anybody. Until somebody can turn your idea into a machine that therefore makes us money, it doesn't make any money for anybody. Land has always made money, and then houses make money. So in our particular economy, these are the things that make money. Now you can split companies into products, you can split companies into services or stocks, but they're still companies. There has to be a company around this to actually generate the income. And so they produce what we call wealth income. And I want you to really understand that. A lot of people have income, but they don't have wealth income. It's not the same thing. Wealth income and income is not the same thing, right? So what I want to really encourage you is to look at the things that produce wealth income, because it's the reason why so many people are struggling financially. And then they arrive at the end of their life with nothing. I was talking to a guy earlier today. So he does Airbnb. He's trying to get out of his Airbnb, but I was like, how did you do it? He bought a house in the west end of Atlanta. He told me that he believes that unless you have a large amount of capital, you should house hack the home. What do I mean by house hack? You should get the house, you live in it, and then somebody else pays you the rent that they live in it. He's Airbnb, and he has a 3-story house. He's Airbnb in the top floor. Then he's on the second floor. He's house hacking the bottom floor, right? And he says the reason why you should do that is because if something happens in the house, you're not on the hook all by yourself to pay all the bills. He says if you got the house all by yourself and you're just renting it out, if something happens and you got a $6,000 bill, you're on the hook all by yourself. See? So he's using the Airbnb or the property, the house, to produce wealth income because those people, they are paying his rent. I'm sorry, they're paying his mortgage. He's able to take that margin of profit from that and go put that into another project. But he had to outlay the capital. Initially, he had to understand how to particularly do this. So we was having that particular conversation because I was asking him, how did he get into that particular market? And then how is he doing his Airbnb? But he's trying to get out of that property now and get into another property. But he has a house that produces wealth income. He also has the land under the house. So that's what I want you to really understand is these are the things that actually do it. Now, he's not talking to me about how to get rich in 90 days with Airbnb. He just does Airbnb. People that own these things produce wealth income. They get rents, they get profits, they get dividends, and they get interest, right? Most people don't get these things. Most people don't get rent. Most people don't get profit. Most people don't get dividends. And most people don't get any interest. And if they do, it's going to be a very small amount of interest based on how much money they have in the bank. We know the banks don't really pay a lot in interest now. Back in the day when I was a little kid, they did. When I was a youngster, you could get, I had to be, when I was real young, like 5, 6, 7 years old though, because of what banks will pay you to keep money in the bank, you can get $1 million and sometimes get almost 30,000 a year off your money and live off the 30,000. Can't do that anymore. Right? But it was a different environment back then. So that's what I want you to kind of understand is that people that own these things produce wealth income. Right? So I want to really ask you, why are you or are you not involved in these particular activities? Do you get any rent? Do you get any profits of anything? Do you get any dividends? And do you get any interest? And are you so to where I'm so stressed out, I'm so financially insecure, I'm in this one deal, and if this one deal doesn't work, I'm just going to be broke the rest of my life? Because I would not encourage anybody. That shows that you don't have really the financial wherewithal to really build wealth if everything is based on one deal, right? So if I just go into this one deal and this one deal don't work, I can't make any money. That's going to be a bad scenario for you from a wealth standpoint, because you want to kind of make it to where you're not in a what we call a single leg stool. And that's not financial advice. It's just my own opinion. Let's go to the next one. Then what they also do is they can work to produce more work income. So we're talking about an entertainer like Beyonce. Right now, she's doing a show all this weekend in Atlanta. She can do massive projects that bring in a lot of money, right? Because she's a big time entertainer. So she'll come into a city and she'll check almost $20 million out of that city, right? So the average person can't do those type of projects. They're not on a Beyonce level. They can maybe do a small event and make thousands of dollars, a few $100,000. But she's an extreme example of a person to where she can work to produce more work income. And the work income she produces is at a certain multiple, at a certain level, that she not can go put that back in to create some more wealth for herself. And that's what the average person really doesn't understand. That's what's going on around them. Now we got a person, let's say hypothetically, this person works in tech. So they make enough money in tech to where they can take some of that money and go buy some properties, right? Because their income is at a high enough money to where once they budget and they pay all their bills, they pay all their expenses, they have enough money left, they have a margin of profit left to go now put that into another deal. The average person doesn't have the ability to do that. So they're working and they're just spending all their money to support themselves. And we're going to kind of talk about that. So what we call work income, their work income is at a level that allows them to go produce more wealth. Let's go to the next one. So wealth income plus work income equals savings. So if you have wealth income, I got properties, I got dividends, I got interest payments, I got profit, I got work income. I make enough money to where after I pay all my bills, I got something left over. That's what we call savings. So let's say you got a person in tech, they making, let's say 125, nothing really crazy, but they got another property bringing them back, let's say 3,000, right? Once they get cash flow positive on that house, and what I mean is that the house is paid off. Yes, they have equity in the house, but now they can bring in enough income to where everything they're bringing in off that house, minus expenses, right, is all going to their savings. So then when they get done at the end of the month, they have this pool of capital saved up that they can now go do what? Put that into another project. Whether that be another home, they're getting some more land, that buying into another business, whether that be buying into a business from a private equity standpoint, or buying into a business from a stock standpoint, they can go put that money in effect, right? Because they do actually have savings. Many people don't have enough savings to put money to work for themselves. So then they can't build wealth because they don't have it to build, right? So I want to get people to really understand something. If you don't have it, you going out this weekend and you going to a restaurant and you eating a fast food, that's not destroying your ability to, you don't have it in the first place. If you go out this weekend and you spend $25, $30 on some food, you're not like a bad person. If you go out and you buy a pair of shoes for $100, you're not a bad person. Because what I don't believe is that if you don't make enough money, but you're working, you shouldn't have anything in the world. I'm not one of those people. I have this message. If you don't make enough money, if you make $40,000 a year and after your bills at the end of the month, you got $300 left and you decide, hey, I'm going to go to a restaurant or go to a movie or have some fun. So instead of you having $300 left, now you got $150 left. I don't think that makes you a bad person, because at $300 a month, yes, it's going to be a few thousand at the end of the year, but that's not necessarily enough to really get you out of your situation. You got to figure out how to get more money coming in on the front end, right? And so I think that's something that a lot of people don't examine. It's easy to go after people's spending habits because nobody really wants to fix the real problem of that. We have a large amount of people that don't make enough money. For whatever reason, they don't bring in enough. Let's keep going. Saving goes to increase wealth. So that person's savings goes into projects to increase wealth. We talked about that already. The wealthless devote all of their income to pay for consumption of food, housing, and energy. This is what the average American deals with. This is what people deal with all over the world, right? Americans deal with this, but then people definitely all over the world deal with this. They work full time and all their money goes to what? Consumption of housing, which is normally going to be your biggest bill. Then you got your car, which is normally going to be your second biggest bill. Then it's food and energy, right? And so this is what wealthless spend their money on, because they don't bring in enough money to go into these other asset classes, because they don't have enough money in savings to do that, right? So if they miss out on Starbucks, that's not going to change anything. If they say, hey, I'm spending $25 a month on Starbucks, that's not going to therefore make them wealthy if they cut the Starbucks off. Doesn't work that way, right? So this is what people really need to understand. Nobody really wants to deal with the income issue, because what you saw with Teamsters and UPS is they dealt with the income issue. They felt like their workers needed to make more money. Now, the workers have to be responsible after that and manage their money first. But the Teamsters didn't tell their workers, well, you know what the problem is? The problem is you go out to eat on the weekend and you buy Starbucks and you buy Jordans when the workers said we need more money. The Teamsters didn't tell their union that, well, that's the real problem, is that you're going out to eat, you're buying Jordans, and yada, yada, yada. They said, we're going to go back to the company. We're going to get you more money, right? UAW now is asking, I think Ford, Stellantis, and somebody else, they're asking for more money. UAW is not telling their union, well, the problem is that you shouldn't go to Starbucks. You don't really need more money. You just shouldn't go to Starbucks. They're looking at how much money the company's making, and they're saying, well, we should get some of that money because we want more money, because they understand the solution is really getting more income into people. It's not telling them you just need to cut all your costs. Now, do you need to be responsible and a good steward of your income? Yes. But if you don't have it, you don't have it. And so most wealthless people are trying to figure out how to pay the bills just to maintain themselves. And they don't have anything left after that. Because why? They don't bring in enough. And nobody wants this, because the real problem is going against the people that are going to be able to pay you some more money. And the real challenge is going out of this economy and making some more money. It's easy to build a platform telling you that you need to just cut all your debt, cut your credit cards up, yada, yada. That's the easy work. Because I'm not in opposition against people. I'm only in opposition against people that are weaker than me, right? Instead of going to people that are stronger than me and demanding that they give us some more money. Okay, let's go to the next one. The wealthy have wealth income that goes back to savings to increase wealth. So that's a feedback mechanism. So we talked about before. You have the wealth income that goes back to savings, that increases your wealth. It creates more wealth income that goes back to savings, increases the wealth. So that's why somebody that makes a lot of money can go buy a property. They keep making more and more money as they get older. They go buy another property, right? They get those properties good. they're cash flowing well, they go get another property. As they get older, they keep making more and more money. And I'm going to do a video on this later on about these really highly paid people that retire with millions of dollars. And it was because they were making so much money initially. They were highly paid employees, made a ridiculous amount of money. So they were able to take that money and to sink that into things that made more money, right? Increase their wealth income. They took that, increased that, and kept doing it. It became a feedback mechanism. So as they got older, their wealth position continued to expand. But you can only do that if you're bringing the money in. If you're not bringing the money in, it can be very difficult to do that, right? Wealthless have to spend almost 100% of their income. Wealthy do not. We talked about that before. When you don't have it, you spend almost everything just maintaining your lifestyle. The wealthy do not. Most people don't know what it's like to, at the end of the month, have 50% of their income still sitting in their savings account, right? It's not because they are frivolous spenders. It's because they don't have to spend the money to maintain themselves. When you don't have to spend the money to maintain yourself, it's easier to make the decision not to spend. When you have to spend the money just to maintain yourself, you can't make the decision not to spend. You have to spend it just to maintain your situation. Okay? And that's what most people really don't understand. Having a 401k or personal home is good. Those assets don't necessarily produce wealth income. I'm not against 401ks. I'm not against personal homes. The problem is a 401k, it creates a dividend maybe, but you normally sink that back into a 401k. It doesn't necessarily create any profit. It doesn't necessarily produce any wealth income, right? You don't get that wealth income until you decide to cash that thing in. So during the course of your life, it doesn't produce wealth income, right? You get it when you decide to cash it in. Personal home, it does produce wealth, but it's illiquid. And your personal home that you live in often does not produce any wealth income unless you house hack it. But if you're just going to live in there with your family, it's very unlikely that's going to produce wealth income, and it's an illiquid asset, right? So I'm not against it, but I'm against people thinking, well, I'm only going to do those two things, and then I'm not going to educate myself on how to do more. Or I became essentially a millionaire on paper via these two things, but I never teach my children anything else. So they just repeat the same process. Am I a big fan of homes? Yes, you can transfer wealth to a home. So I'm a big fan of the wealth transfer through a home. But what I'm not a fan of is that every generation running the same format. So if the parents or the grandparents are boomers and they got the 401k and they got the personal home, what do they teach the children about how to build wealth? That's an advancement of what they did. Because often what we see is everybody running the same format. Nobody tries to figure out how to improve this particular model. Okay? So they're great assets, but they don't necessarily produce wealth income. Now, here's an example of what we're talking about. Beyonce is in my city this week. We talk about work income that allows you to produce wealth income. Her European leg did 154 million. I spoke to somebody earlier today, and they said that her New York dates were doing like 20 million a day. So each one of her New York dates, she did around 20 million, right? She's going to come off the tour north of $200 million. Now, she's not going to get all of that money. She's going to get a percentage. She's then able to take that money because she doesn't need money. She's able to take that money and do what? Put that into some more assets that are going to produce some more wealth for her descendants. So when she's not here, they don't have to do anything, right? She's an extreme example of somebody running this particular game. But often I use this extreme example so people can see it. So it's not about celebrating her as a celebrity, but understanding is that she's able to go do work, produce so much income on the front end. She doesn't need any money right now. She's able to take that particular money and sink that into some more projects that are going to produce some more wealth for her. And where she's at right now, Beyonce can just go buy index funds because she's bringing in so much money at one time. It doesn't matter that she's only going to get 8 to 11%, right? She doesn't have to chase an outsized gain because of the amount of initial capital she's going to be able to outlay to put into that particular project. Here's another example, right, that we did from the last time. If you were to buy Ford, they get a 65-cent special dividend, right? You buy those particular shares at that particular date. You got that many shares times a particular dividend. So often, because we don't know how markets work, we don't know that you have particular companies that'll pay you just to own their stock. So you may get a normal dividend, then you also get a special dividend. I want to say maybe 2 years ago, Costco gave out like, I think I'm on a $7 dividend just to own their shares, right? So you get paid just to be an owner of the company. But when you don't know these type of things exist, you don't even understand that they're available to you. And if you just own the index fund, you don't really benefit from this because your percentage of what you own afford in the index fund, if they're even in the SPY index fund, they should be, is going to be so low, it really won't make any difference. So this is what happens when you own independent shares. And so what I want people to understand is that when you actually understand how to build wealth, you can position yourself for this. I don't mean just buy forward, but I know people that own indexes and they own individual stocks. Well, why do they own some of those individual stocks? Because either they have a great growth potential or they pay out a dividend. And so that's what I want you to understand is that when you don't bring in enough money on the front end, it's going to be very difficult for you to build wealth. And so you're going to always be scrambling. Inflation, they say now it's around 3.2%. We'll see if they can get it down to 2%. But I want you to understand something about inflation. Inflation doesn't mean that prices go down. Inflation means that prices stay flat. It's called the rate of change of inflation. So what you understand from a calculus standpoint, what the rate of change means, it doesn't mean that prices go down. It means that prices stay flat. As long as prices don't keep going up, then the rate of change of inflation will start to decline. It doesn't mean that prices are cheaper. And then what happens is people eventually adjust to the prices because we know that gas is more expensive than what it was 20 years ago, right? So we can't expect gas to go back to that particular price. Something crazy happens. Many people are not looking at what is going on in the world, how this impacting their inability or their ability to build wealth, and then coming up with a plan on how to solve that particular problem. They think either somebody else is going to do it for them or they're just ignoring it. And it's not going to be as unfortunate for them as it's going to be for their children because their children are going to arrive with the same problem that they had. And that's why I think the irresponsibility is at. I don't think the irresponsibility is that if you just all by yourself and you don't care. It's when you have other people that need to do better than you, but they need you to actually lead the way and be the example so they can do better. And that person decides, you know what, it's something I really don't want to focus on. So I'm going to not focus on it. And then what happens is that situation gets transferred to the next generation. Right? I think that's what's really unfortunate because they may not even be aware that that's what they're going to be walking into, but they'll figure it out when they get 25, 30, 40, 50 years old. And I think that's what's really unfortunate. So that's all we're going to talk about today. We're not going to be here long. We're going to read these comments and we're going to get up on out here. So if you have any questions, you have any comments, you disagree with my analysis, here's your opportunity to come on. Let me pin that in the chat. That's pinned. And we're going to read these questions, man, and we're going to get up on out of here. So questions, comments, and disagree, come on live, right? Let me go to the, oh, my bad. Let me go to the end, read these comments, and we're going to get up on out of here. Last one. If you have to constantly spend just to maintain your lifestyle, it can be difficult to build wealth. So remember that on the way out of the door. Let me go to the top slide, read these comments, and we're going to bounce. So Leo Johnson, man, appreciate the $1.99 super chat. Ray Gun, man, appreciate the $2 super chat, man. Appreciate y'all coming through. Let me get rid of that. What's going on, Julian Brown? What's going on, Navy Vet? What's going on, Sandman? Warriors Code, what's going on? What's going on, Miss Essence Buckingham? How you feel? Tech RX, what's going on? GC, what's up with it? LG, what's going on? Erica D, what's going on? The Rarest Jewel, appreciate you coming through. So Quentin Jordan says it's crazy. You have to make $100K a year to afford a one-bedroom in Miami. Yeah, Miami is a very expensive real estate market. It's not going to get cheaper until it becomes inhospitable, probably because of flooding. That's when people probably will start leaving. But Miami, that real estate market is in such high demand, it doesn't matter. Like prices is not even. People in Miami will buy a condo $3 million in cash, right? They will. You know, to live off the water, they'll spend $3 million in cash. You got Venezuelans and Brazilians doing that all the time. Like their real estate market there is crazy. Essence says being real about your finances put a fire under you. Class income delusion is very much alive, especially on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, what we see, Essence, is that the infrastructure, it allows people to be more and more delusional about their situation, right? Because imagine if all these workers went to their bosses and said, I need to get a raise, right? So wages are higher now than they've been in a long time, But imagine what happens to this system if all these workers go to their boss and say, hey, I need to get more money. So it benefits the system to keep everybody in this delusion around what they really have. And a lot of that, to me, in my opinion, is being supported via the credit markets. If they take credit away from most people, consumer credit, most people will really have to accept their financial reality, and they will lose it because they wouldn't be able to buy what they want to buy because they really don't have the money coming in the door. But because we have very, very robust credit markets inside the United States, it allows people to maintain their consumption without having to really deal with how much money they really don't make. And that's kind of what makes our system different than a lot of other systems, is the fact that you can use credit to get what you want, as opposed to if you were living in like Central America, Africa, places like that, you wouldn't be able to use any credit because they don't have the banking system. So you only can spend what you actually have. But I think that's what creates a delusion. But there's a lot of delusions on social media. There's people that just make this stuff up as they go along. And they got people to agree with them. So it's all good. So Dr. K says, I played with DC MD numbers this past week. It was like, how do people live? Yeah, it's difficult. I got some family that lives in Alexandria. It's expensive, but they got 2 incomes. Right? I don't know how anybody does it on 1 income out there unless you're making like $1 million a year. Stay ready. Appreciate you coming through. So Dr. K says, thank you for saying this. I'm over folks telling people that solely their life spending is a problem. Yeah, I mean, they just got to come up with something, you know, because it's easy to do that without having to deal with the real problem. And we get a lot of that, especially on social, to where people will try to duck dealing with the real problem. And we get also on social, a lot of people that have been taught, haven't really been taught, but they've, in my opinion, I would say adjusted or adapted to single factor analysis, right? And I think that has a lot to do with the lack of quantitative background, where they think everything can be boiled down to the single factor, right? When doing an analysis of a situation. And that's like saying that we can engineer cars or we can model how to travel through space with just like single factors. And you really can't, but it allows them to get to the solution without having to do any real thinking. And I think that's very attractive to a lot of people. In marketing, we call that heuristics. Budgets would drive people crazy. It will have you eating tuna fish sandwiches thinking you save money. The real problem is your income. Definitely. And I'm not a fan of telling people that work very hard and that do honest work to make their money that they shouldn't enjoy themselves. Because what happened is that all that desire would get pent up and it can end up coming out the wrong way. I don't believe in telling somebody that works 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday, on the weekend, they can't do nothing fun. Like, that don't make any sense, right? It don't mean they got to lose themselves on the weekend, but they should be able to enjoy themselves because why? You work 40 hours this week. You know, so I'm not a fan of that narrative. So Essence says, you know how a lot of these budget people get paid a lot of money to talk down on lower income people. I think it's a distraction, just like celebrities are paid to distract from competing. Yeah, I understand. And it's an easy audience to go after. You know, for them to actually talk about how wealth is actually built, they wouldn't get the coverage that they get. You know, when you build certain type of platforms, in my opinion, based on certain things that are not the mainstream narrative, in my opinion, you won't get the coverage. You know, so I think they do that because they understand that's the best thing for their visibility in this particular space. So Ant says, I prefer individual stocks over index fund. I like a combination of both. So business talk, man, I appreciate it. So Drop 16 says, that's why you have to build your annual income. Trying to get my household to $350 a year. Yeah, definitely. You do got to work on that. And then if you don't have it, then in my opinion, you need to group up with people that have something that they can put into a project, because you don't have to do it all by yourself. You know, but I just think the idea that the money it's like a business, and me saying what, so let me give an example. The reason why a lot of these businesses are able to owe money and still go to the credit markets and get their debt refinanced, and they need to get sell another bond at a longer term is because they do have money coming in the door, right? So they look at the money coming into the bondholders, look at the money coming in the door, or they look at the physical assets that the business has and they say, you know what? We believe this justifies us extending this bond or selling you or buying a new bond from you. The average person doesn't realize that it often not bringing enough in to where they can't support anything else, right? So most businesses cut costs, yes, but the way businesses really expand is they have to bring in more money, right? Because you can't cut money that's not coming in. So when businesses start talking about cutting expenses, what it normally means is that they're not bringing in enough money to where they're not going to change the narrative to where we're cutting expenses. That's why I'm not a fan of telling people they should just cut expenses, because most businesses, when they start talking about cutting expenses, it's because the revenues are being challenged. So now they got to create a new narrative until they get past this point of revenue or margin compression till they can get into something else. So when you study the markets, you see all the tricks. The average person doesn't study the markets at all. So they let people say these things to them and they think it makes sense because this person is, they got a license to sell me their services from this particular organization. But it's really not what corporations do to manage their debt and to manage their income issues. And that's really what I look at. So GC says, the issue is getting the money. If I had $1 billion, I could literally just buy treasuries to be straight for the rest of my life, throw an index fund, definitely. That's what people don't realize. If I was to hit that Powerball that somebody in Florida hit, I could just go buy 10-year treasuries. I don't have to do anything exotic with my money because the initial amount of money that I can put in would be so great. I could take 5%. I could take 10%, and it wouldn't matter. And I'm going to talk about this later. When you don't have that initial capital, you probably can't do average things to make your money. But a lot of people don't want to hear that, right? Because what you really need in this system is you need a long amount of time, like this guy that started buying index funds and he was 22 years old and now he's 60, so he has millions of dollars. Or you need a large amount of money to put in these vehicles to get your money out of it. Because the growth rate is very average. You get between 8 to 11%. When you don't have those two things on your side, you may have to do something out of the ordinary or something riskier, like start a business, because you can make more money in the business than you could trying to get a return out of the market. But the business is riskier because why? You got to put money into the business and it might not make you any money. But I think a lot of working class people that are of average income, they think they can invest like billionaires, like what GC's talking about, and end up in the same place as them. It doesn't work that way. This system isn't set up to work that way. Right? Erica D, man, I appreciate the $4.99 super chat. So Essence says, how do you build wealth with your family if they don't want to participate in upskills themselves? So Miss Essence, what I would tell you is, first, are you the example to them of doing it? Then 2, you may have to go build your own family. So you may not be able to convince the people in your family to do it. And that may just be how it is. So that you may have to go build your own family. You may never be able to convince those people. But often when they see you doing it, they can get more inspired to do it. But you may just have to go build your own family. So I wouldn't wait for anybody that don't want to go along with me. What I would do is build with the people that want to build with me, right? That's what I would do. If I was your age, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't try to convince anybody anything. I would go get with the people that want to do it with me and build out. Because often the way human beings conduct themselves is they look at the people around them to determine what they're going to do, right? Most people don't have an independent mind. They just say they do. They look at what people around them are doing. So if we get enough people doing this type of stuff, it'll start to become normative behavior. But right now, normative behavior is not even talking about this type of stuff, right? But great question. Okay, appreciate the $5. Do I have any examples of intellectual property becoming a business? Yeah, StreamYard. That we're on right now. Facebook, Twitter. They're just ideas that they turn into businesses. It's not even a unique idea. Facebook is Blackboard. Some people don't remember Blackboard. They didn't go to college when we were using Blackboard. Facebook is Blackboard, right? So to create a social media network using Blackboard was just IP. It was intellectual property. It was an idea. They turned it into a business, right? So a lot of businesses that you see were just ideas that turned into a business model based around executing on that idea. But just the idea often is not a business, right? So I would really discourage people from doing the idea thing. The question is, can you turn it into a business? Let me give you another intellectual property. We got a special way of taking plant matter and turning it into a vegan item they called it Beyond Meat. Terrible business. But it was an idea. Their process that they do probably is proprietary. It doesn't matter though, because it was a terrible business because nobody wants the product. Right? One thing we are really good at as our people, we're masters of intellectual property. We're terrible at building structure and building business. Right? That's why I hammer our people so much to build structure, right? To actually go out in the real world and solve problems. We're the best in the world. We're the best in the history of the world of intellectual property. Nobody has better ideas than us. Nobody. Right? Nobody has better ideas than us. I was watching a documentary on one of my favorite producers. You might not know him, kid out of VA named Lex Luthor. Lex had the best ideas for music. The structure and the business around his music was null and void. So he lost a lot of money because there was nothing around him to protect the idea. We're the best in the world at intellectual property. Nobody's better than us at intellect. We've proven that over the history of the world. We're not really that good in this modern era of structure, process, and actually going out in the real world and solving problems. We think sitting on a live stream talking for 8 hours is how you solve a problem. Nobody does that except us or the other people of other groups who are failures. They're the only people that do that. So I'm not going to associate with the failures of other groups because the reason why they're the failures is because they don't do what actually works for their group. But that's a great question. Bezos bought a $6-8 million house in Miami. It's weird somebody will buy a house and the place is going to flood. So the numbers down there are just crazy. Miami is going to flood in probably the next 25 to 50 years. Army Corps engineers have already told them that, right? And they won't do anything to stop it. So it's crazy that people are still buying that big ticket property down there. But just Bezos can blow $68 million and it won't change his lifestyle. So he don't care. But it's the numbers down there are just weird because Miami is going to flood. That is 100% a guarantee. We might not be around when it happens, but it's going to happen. So Beautiful Ashes says, when you leave a company, should you keep your 401k in the current plan? So Beautiful Ashes, I will go speak to a financial advisor with that question because I can't give financial advice. Or the people that you have that you bought your 401k from, I will go consult with them. So I would say two options: consult with the people that you have your 401k with, or go speak to a financial advisor or a CPA and let them tell you, because I can't give you financial advice that's that specific. Well, that's a great question though. I think I might have been talking about John. I don't know his name, but it might have been John Ruiz. I know it was a guy that brought, them two white girls that came to Miami to play. They got that big NIL deal. It was a Miami businessman. He Cuban, so it probably is him. You know what I'm saying? So I was going to do a video on that, but I just got caught up. But it probably was him. If the Ford fix their spending problem, America stops running. Yeah, America's 2/3 consumption. So they don't care how broke you are, they need you to just keep buying. If everybody flips from consuming to investing and trying to build wealth, this country gets turned over because it can't support itself that way. The biggest corporations in America primarily are consumption companies. They're B2C consumption companies, so they can't really support themselves. If you say we're going to stop spending just to maintain my level of consumption and start taking that money and start looking to get a return on capital, because a lot of that money would leave the United States and go to emerging markets. They don't want that either. That's a whole nother conversation people can't even wrap their head around. So to keep the money here in this economy is we just make sure everybody just has to keep consuming. What's going on, Katrina? Every dollar has a purpose. It's spent, saved, invested, given away, all for taxes. Definitely. Every dollar got a purpose. That's why I say having a budget is important because you know how the money is coming in and out and what it's being used for. That's why I think it's important. So I remember watching Dave Ramsey, a young guy called asking for advice on buying a house to live in, house hack. He had a high income, no debt. He told him he shouldn't do it. I mean, that's Dave Ramsey's brand. Dave Ramsey is conservative to the extreme when it comes to anything dealing with money. And that's just his brand. But Dave made all his money on business. He didn't make his money saving it. Dave is a multi-millionaire in the hundreds of millions of dollars because Dave has intellectual property, right, that he turned into a very good business model. And he has great partnerships. He has great affiliate partnerships. He has government partnerships. His business model, his businesses that generate profit for him are very, very on a very high level. You know, Dave probably got a whole team of accountants making sure he don't pay taxes. I wouldn't say that. Dave probably has a whole team of accountants trying to mitigate his tax responsibility. I should say it like that. So when so he makes a lot of money off business. Dave is not where he's at because he just didn't spend money, right? I don't know of any miser that is wealthy. Not saying it didn't happen, but Dave's narrative is very much to be a miser. The word even tell you not to be a miser, right? But, that's just his brand, is to be conservative to a fault. And I'm not against it. That's how he makes his money. So entry level is 50 to 100,000 via rental bonds only after 6 months to whoever. Okay, you're talking to LJ, my bad. So Anthony says, I had to build my own family. Yeah, some people got to do. That's what, these people that get on YouTube, and I'm not talking about Essence, but the people that get on YouTube and they complain about, like, my family didn't do. I'm like, bro, go build your own family. All right. Just go build your own situation, and then you ain't got to worry about what the people over there doing. But that means I got to go do something now. I can't just complain on YouTube. So I just tell people sometimes you got to go build your own team to do what you want to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes that's what you got to do. So Essence says people really don't use Blackboard, we use Canvas now. I feel you. Yeah, Facebook is nothing but, it was just Blackboard, right? Facebook was the Blackboard platform that they turned into a social media site. So any advice on making $80K a year? I don't have that's a kind of general question. You got a specific question, Aunt Johnson? So Jesus said John Rivers brought a bunch of folks to him. Yeah, he need to work on getting some people on that football team, right? Because them two chicks, when they play LSU, it was real obvious that it was levels. So he got them there, got some attention. But when they play LSU, it was obvious in like the first 3 minutes of the game is levels. Because LSU got pro guards out there. And them girls are not going to make the pros. But they're going to make a lot of money. I think they're going into wrestling now. So, they're going to make money because, people think they look decent and they Anglo-Saxons. So, it's money in this economy. I ain't mad at them. Get your money. Beauty says, I call financial planners, speak with company. Yeah, definitely. I would reach out to them. So I'll reach out to my company first, the people that sold you the 401k, and then go get you a financial planner because that's very specific financial advice. So I couldn't give you that. But that was a great question, though. So Lock Vegas says, I've been building a market-based algorithm for the past 6 years. It's finally ready. Intellectual property is where we can make a difference. Okay, well, good luck in your rollout, man. Hope you get paid. So Edge Deep says, these are excellent points. Okay, my bad. I already read that. Dave Ramsey rents our house. He stopped doing that since he can't house hack. Yeah, Ramsey get to the money. So Ant says, where should I park my additional income and parking money in a brokerage account? Because I know a crash is coming so I can capitalize next year. So you mean the additional outside of what you've been putting in your brokerage account? What do you want to do with the money? Because I can't tell you what to do with the money. What do you want to do with the money? There's a million places to put your money. What do you want to do with it? I was looking at carbon credits the other day. So what do you want to do with the money? What returns are you looking to get on the money? You need to get the PDF. That'll answer all your questions. The question is, what do you want to do with the money? If not, just keep stacking it up. But you're not going to get no return on them sitting in the bank. Truth, when you're not surrounded by people focused on building wealth, it's hard to see what could be done and what's possible. Donna Del Sol, I appreciate the $9.99 super chat. Definitely. So what I really encourage people to do is try to get around those people. Because to be real, Donna, and I'm going to tell a story. I got hella family from Chicago. There's no reason why we don't own like 20 properties in Chicago. The problem is we weren't raised to own those properties. We was raised to just go get high income jobs. So a lot of people in my family got high income jobs. But we should probably own like 20 properties in Chicago. But it wasn't the goal of the family to raise us to do that. Right? So I don't try to make them see it the way I see it. I just go do what I do. Because some people, you never going to get them to see it the way you see it. They want to do what they want to do with their life. And I'm not against it. I'm against everybody living the life they want to live. I'm so pro that. I'm not going to never try to make somebody do something they don't want to do. Right? That's what them other people try to do. I want to build wealth. How much is the Patreon? The Patreon probably won't have that specific information, but it's I think $25. But it's going to be $30 like once I get some things worked out. But the Patreon won't have that specific information. I said you should probably get the PDF because the question is, what do you want to do with the money and what returns you're looking to get on the money? So you don't need to get the PDF to get to figure that out. You just need to figure that out. Right? If you got a pool of capital sitting up, what do you want to do with it and what returns are you looking to get from it? And then from there, you can kind of put your game plan together, or you can just keep banking it until something comes up that you decide you want to make a move on it. But like we talked about before, you're not going to get any return on your money in the bank, but you're not going to lose your money either, except the rate of inflation. So that's pretty much going to be it. I appreciate everybody for coming through. Yeah, I think it's his brand. But you know, people is working for him. It's working for Dave Ramsey. Right? So I'm not against nothing. It's working for him. Like all these people on YouTube, what I had to just like acting. I have it myself. I have a particular narrative. I have a particular personality, and people know me for certain stuff. Dave Ramsey's been doing what he's been doing for however long he's been doing it. Probably almost longer than I've been alive, right? So people know when you deal with Dave Ramsey, this is what you're going to get out of him. So I think people call him up already knowing what he's going to say, and he just reiterates what they are. Because if I call Dave Ramsey, I know what he's going to tell me. So there's no surprises there. So I just think that's what's going on. So people call Dave Ramsey so he can tell them what they want to hear anyway. So I don't even see no entertainment in it because I know what he's going to say before he even says it, because that's what he says all the time. But that's his brand, and it works for him. The guy's worth well over $100 million. So big up to him. We ain't going to take nothing from him because I respect the business. And it's his business. He owns everything. So I ain't mad at him. The PDF is already available. It's when you buy the course, you get the PDF. That offer will be over at the end of the month. So appreciate everybody for coming through. Stay safe. Make sure you stay hydrated. Talk to you later.